And I now have the great pleasure of inviting up to you Robin Retmer and Lillian Marquez from the Amity Foundation. Come on up, ladies. So the presentation is going to be around the family services in the therapeutic community in Amity Foundation. Just by way of introduction, Robin has over 4 decades of being and delivering of service and being a deliverer of service and serving. Robin has a passion for family service work, and we're going to hear a lot more about that right now. So, Robin, over to you.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Losing track of time with all the travel. So I wanted to just frame today's presentation. There is a lot of talk these days about family services, and for the purpose of this presentation, the family services we're talking about are actually the services provided to the students' families. Talking extended families, their parents, their spouses, their children, and so on and so forth. My history goes back to the mid-70s. I spent about 8 years doing what we call street research. And once I finished that phase in my life, I went to work for a program that was working with juvenile delinquents coming out of corrections. And I worked with a psychiatrist that was doing the wildest things. I couldn't believe it. I was 24 years old and sitting around an outpatient program, and he was going into homes of these kids, 15 and 16-year-old kids, having the parents, the brothers and sisters, the dogs, the cats, like everybody, make a little circle in the living room, and they were having weekly circles with the entire family of these children that we were working with, and I just found that so inspiring. So hence, the rest is history. I wanted to take a minute to, of course, thank the European Federation for 40 years of service, and a special thank you to Phoenix Futures for hosting this amazing event. So in the 60s and 70s, really, in this work, families were viewed, the coin phrase was codependent, and kind of in the way, would muddy the waters in terms of getting your lives together. And in the later years, a lot of shifts really in that philosophy. Families have started to become full participants at Amity in the students' recovery. The families we've worked with have represented all facets of the larger community. The ethnicity, the economic backgrounds, the intellectual horizons, they were all different. Family systems were the problem, and the way through the problem was to heal the whole. We really took a look at understanding that many people who come and get help return back into the same family with the same dynamic. And why not make a shift in everyone's thinking? Alice Miller once wrote that the emotional access to the truth is the indispensable precondition for healing. So Amity's family support services, really the model was based on a lot of work from Virginia Satir and Alice Miller. Some of the key components are, of course, to provide safe settings for individual families to heal. What we've done has included sociograms. Many of you have seen those, family mapping that were done not only by the students, but done with their family members as well. A lot of telling of stories. Things changed for me in my life when I realized that my parents were people too. Who knew? They were my parents, and I had a better understanding once I got to know who they really were. And of course, these families that were coming to us, along with the students, were in need of some ceremony, not only for themselves, but for the rest of the family members. Many of the participants' families suffered from alienation. The students certainly did, the families did too. Neither of them understood each other at all. It was our job to create a healing environment that was conducive to healing the entire family system. There was a lot of voluntary self-disclosure, which certainly helped again to break down that barrier between the student and their family and to start to improve communication. We had to come up with techniques that helped us to address the stress from both parties, both the student and their parents and their spouses and their brothers and sisters. And we had to learn how to have each individual family member be empowered. And of course, we had to teach people how to set boundaries in their relationships. In the circles, some of the presenters this morning were talking about affirmation. In the circles, it was incredibly important to make sure that there was affirmation, that the family members learned how to affirm each other, and that the families really actively participated, not only in their own process, but in the students' process for change. Virginia Satir quoted that communication is to relationships as breath is to life. So in the weekly family support circles that we were having, there were 3 to 4 family members in each one of the circles, so whole family units, which really made an interesting dynamic because there were students who really had a difficult time talking to their parents, but could talk to someone else's parents. And there were other parents who couldn't, vice versa, and they found it a lot easier to express what they were going through with another one of the students and not necessarily their child. We had to establish a core group of family members to get this started. So we found families who were interested in what we were doing, excited about it, excited about the recovery, and could help build on that. We also started midway through the process, really about 20 years ago, doing quarterly family workshops. So these started Saturday morning and ended Sunday night. And out of sampling over the years, 93% of and some folks hadn't even come to our weekly family groups. So some of the first encounter in being in a family circle, 93% of the participants reported that their communication improved. 100% of the participants that were surveyed said that the communication improved, and they were comfortable talking about their family issues within the circles they were involved in. And 93% felt that they could better understand their family member. So the goals for Amity's Family Services Program is really to liberate the families from the causes, to evaluate and change the family's concepts and myths about issues within their families, empower individuals to recognize and help deal with resistance, with loneliness, with changing of roles, with affirmation and forgiveness, and really helping them problem solve. They had to learn how to develop positive responses to their own behavior, have to start learning about sustaining relationships, not only the relationships of the present, but relationships in the past, learn how to set healthy boundaries, internalize concepts of letting go, and help the family members develop a sense of emotional vocabulary, emotional literacy. Supportive relationships with each one of the family members. Challenges we faced. A lot of fixed mindset as opposed to growth mindset. Families felt like it wasn't their problem, it was their child's problem to deal with. A lot of generational trauma. helpers were the enemy, meaning that all of us folks who were reaching out and attempting to help give them support said, nope, that's far enough. And developing relationships with individual family members. Maya Angelou quoted, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you." And we encouraged everyone to tell their story. Family committed to each other. There was the ideal, willing to sit down. That was the biggest thing. We need people to just sit down and learn how to listen to each other. Folks had to learn how to ask for what they needed. I need this, no, and how to say no, and how to say stop. And families started learning how to empower one another. So before I pass the baton on to Lillian, just a little bit, you have to have a sense of humor with this too. So this is Happy Life Airlines. You have to assure a smoother flight. Please check your emotional baggage before boarding. So this guy's boarding with a bad job, his ex-wife, his mother, and working on his overachieving brother. So thank you, and with that I'd like to invite up Lillian Marquez. Lillian has been working as a regional director in one of our prisons and has an experience of her own to talk about in terms of family services. Thank you.
Good afternoon, family. My name is Lillian Marquez, and I am here to talk about some of our other family services, in particular, family services that are specific to our faculty and how that relates to the direction in which we're going. So I want to start out by saying that when I think about the process of change, whether applied to a community, an organization, or an individual, I don't see it as a linear process at all. Actually, I envision this process as more of a spiraling staircase, if you will. We sometimes take steps backwards, and we are free to take in different perspectives depending on where we stand at any one point in our process. As we continue to learn and grow and teach others, along the way, we move forward in this process of change. That's something that I'm going to illustrate. Robin described family services provided by Amity Foundation from a historical perspective. She described what we're currently doing and how we intend to grow this very important work as we move forward. I'm here to share my experience, my strength, and my hope as it relates to family services in the therapeutic community. And as I do, you may notice that spiral staircase that I was speaking about earlier, and that I will move back and forth in my own timeline, as my own process has been anything but linear. In April 2021, I underwent a second double mastectomy due to breast cancer. How is that possible, you might ask? You're not a cow. How can you have a second double mastectomy? Well, in November of 2017, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma that had started to spread to other cells. As a single mother of 2 children, I chose to do whatever was necessary to remove the cancer cells from my body. That resulted in my first double mastectomy. As a woman in today's society, I was concerned with my outward appearance, and I opted for immediate reconstruction. So on January 22nd, 2018, I had that first double mastectomy, followed by immediate reconstruction. And I was just going to move right along. This led to 3 years of health complications and a total of 7 surgeries in that time, as my immune system continued to reject foreign objects that I felt the need to have placed in my body. In April of 2021, I underwent what I refer to as my second double mastectomy. And it left me feeling devastated, traumatized. 3 months later, however, in this state that I was in, I was invited to attend a week-long workshop hosted by Robin Retmer and Rod Mullen. And the name of the workshop was called Celebrating the Narrative of Our Lives. This could not have come at a better time for me. This workshop consisted of sitting in circles daily with other faculty. Throughout the week, we'd share and celebrate the narrative of our lives. We broke bread together. We even lodged together. It was like an immersion training, in a way, or an experiential process in which we shared significant stories of our lives, offered one another feedback and support, and weaved a tapestry of friendship. In my own process, I shared a lot about what I was going through, past traumas, and my first community, my family of origin in particular, my grandparents and my Uncle David. My grandparents, John and Lillian Marquez, established what we lovingly refer to as Marcus Manor on their wedding day, August 12th, 1951. They had 8 children. I happened to be the oldest surviving grandchild and had the pleasure of spending a lot of time at Marcus Manor. It was certainly my sanctuary. It was a bustling place, people coming and going, lots of noise, lots of cooking, lots of laundry. In my grandmother's house, there was a laundry chute. It went from the top floor down to the bottom, and we'd often use it as a slide and play in there. There was a lot of singing. There were a lot of silly songs that my grandfather would make up, funny words set to very popular Christmas carols. There were many friends who came to the house, and a lot of family who gathered there. It was not uncommon for my grandparents to take in other people into their home, whether they were here on a football scholarship and couldn't reside in the dorms during the holidays, or their family had to relocate and their kids wanted to graduate from high school with the friends they had grown up with their whole life. It was a very busy and full house, to say the least. And although my grandparents did not have much in the way of material possessions or money, they always had enough. What they did have in abundance was hope, faith, and love. These 3 values carried them through their darkest times. And I came to realize that they fortified me in my own. Our family has known tragedy and trauma, addiction, incarceration, violence, death of children, young and old, divorce, and suicide, as well as sexual assault. I want to talk with you a little bit about an accident that happened with my Uncle David. My Uncle David was born August 13th, 1957. When he was about 4 years old, there was an accident and he was struck by a car crossing the street. The doctors said that there would be no chance of his survival. However, my grandparents had hope and faith and love, and they sat by his side and they made a decision to remove him from the machines when it was time, and lo and behold, he did survive. The doctors then said he would never walk or talk. He would just be what they referred to as a vegetable. But my grandparents had hope and faith and love that sustained them. I was born when my Uncle David was 20 years old. And he wasn't a vegetable. He was my childhood playmate. He would chase me around the house. He would play hide and seek with me. We'd play catch with a frisbee in the front yard. He was the heart of our family. Although he was handicapped, developmentally disabled, and unable to properly articulate his words, he was the best of us. He had nicknames for the people he liked the best. He was happy, loving, patient, kind, and so very grateful for the simplest of things. Our family developed a shared language based on my Uncle David's pronunciation of his words. For example, instead of saying thank you, he pronounced it ginku, and that's how he said it. So oftentimes we'd be sitting at the dinner table and say things like, please pass the salt. You get the salt, ginku. Please pass the napkins, ginku. And it was a thing that we shared in the Marcus manner. He shaped us to be inclusive of others, no matter the differences in appearance or language. He taught us patience, because it often took patience to simply communicate. What I came to realize is that while there have been times in my life when I was more focused on the traumas that I had endured, particularly within my family of origin, the place from which I draw my strength is found in the love from my family and the gratitude for the sense of belonging. That has always fortified my resilience and helped me to move ever forward. The gifts that I have received from my family, my first community, are listed here. It was a shared culture, whether it was around food, music, games we played, traditions we had, ceremony, certainly. Shared values are something that we can always come back to. And those that stand out to me the most are hope, faith, and love that were demonstrated. That sense of belonging that I talked about gave me a lot of fortitude in my life. even through the darkest times. These are some of the conclusions that I came to after participating in the workshop that I attended in April with Robin and Rod. There were so many benefits to this workshop. The people who participated, we were all able to build cohesive faculty relationships. We were able to have a forum to practice self-care. We were able to have a new understanding of family of origin dynamics, and to have the ability to move on from there to teach others that we can celebrate the good and heal from past trauma through these processes. Building sustainable community in the process. So in honor of my Uncle David, as I wrap up, I'd like to say to you, Genku, for your time, for your attention. I'm so very pleased to be here with you, and enjoy the rest of your conference.